This program is about unsolved mysteries. Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials have participated in recreating the events. What you are about to see is not a news broadcast.
June 1968. A funeral train bearing the body of Senator Robert F. Kennedy slowly made its way from New York to Washington, D.C. Along the route, thousands mourned the loss of a favorite son. Three days earlier, Robert Kennedy was killed by an assassin's bullet at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, California. For those who were there, the agonizing moments which followed the shooting will never be forgotten.
By that time, the pandemonium had broken loose. I mean, everybody was screaming.
There were people yelling, "Kennedy was shot, Kennedy was shot. Get an ambulance, get a doctor."
Many people jumped on Sirhan and hitting him, yelling and screaming.
Somebody was trying to get the gun. They couldn't get the gun out of his hand. It was like frozen in his hand.
So I was afraid somebody was going to snap his back, because by that time, Greer and Rayford Johnson had shown up, and I thought they'd just snap him like a matchstick. And Greer finally got possession of the gun and gave it to Rayford Johnson. And it was agreed, Johnson was to hold on to that gun, not give it to anyone until the police arrived.
On April 17, 1969, Sirhan B. Sirhan was convicted of the first-degree murder of Robert Kennedy. Sirhan never denied killing Kennedy, but has claimed on several occasions that he cannot remember the period of time of the shooting. The final report of the Los Angeles Police Department definitively states that Sirhan acted alone and fired the fatal shot. Throughout history, the shockwaves of political assassination have almost inevitably given rise to questions of conspiracy. In that regard, the murder of Robert Kennedy is no exception. Despite the fact that Sirhan was apprehended at the scene after firing 8 shots, it is denied that anyone else was involved. But in this instance, there are researchers and eyewitnesses who claim to have evidence which suggests that a second gun was fired in the Ambassador Hotel, and that it may not have been Sirhan who fired the fatal shot.
I don't think it's even possible that Sirhan could have shot Senator Kennedy 4 times at point-blank range. It's not even possible.
I, at this point, feel that there probably was a second gun there and that it was fired.
The chief of detectives who supervised the investigation disagrees.
There's no question in my mind that Sirhan killed Kennedy, and they acted alone.
Was there more than one gun fired that night? Just this week, the Washington Post published an article by Dan Moldea detailing new evidence which addresses this disturbing question. We'll examine both sides of this most important and controversial case in one moment on Unsolved Mysteries. Under ordinary circumstances, we would not film a recreation of the murder of a United States senator. But because some independent investigators claim that eyewitness accounts and other evidence contradict the official police report, we have carefully reenacted the event based on both crime scene evidence and eyewitness testimony. The evening of June 4th, 1968 began as a celebration.
I thank all of you who made this possible this evening.
With a victory in the California primary, Senator Robert F. Kennedy became the favorite to win the Democratic presidential nomination.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
After concluding his speech, Senator Kennedy was scheduled to attend a press conference in the Colonial Room some 40 yards away. Kennedy exited from the rear of the stage, turned right, traveled down a hallway, and entered the hotel's kitchen pantry. Kennedy was escorted by a hotel maitre d' and paused to shake hands with the kitchen staff. Contrary to popular belief, there were no photographs or film footage taken at the exact moment of the shooting. Sirhan fired a .22 caliber revolver with a cylinder capable of holding 8 rounds. Despite being immediately restrained, he continued to fire until the gun was empty. Robert Kennedy was mortally wounded and would die 26 hours later. 5 bystanders were also seriously injured, but all survived the attack. Sirhan was taken into custody by the Los Angeles Police Department. 5 days later, the LAPD organized a 40-member task force, which was known as Special Unit Senator, or SUS. The LAPD declined interview requests for this broadcast. A spokesman stated, quote, "The reports speak for themselves, and the right person was arrested and prosecuted," end quote. However, the former chief of detectives, with overall responsibility for the investigation, did agree to be interviewed.
So the SUS organization was created to not only to investigate the assassination, but any ramification of that assassination that could possibly be a conspiracy. We didn't know that it wasn't the time it occurred. We had no idea what the exact facts were.
Once the pantry area was secured, the LAPD Scientific Investigation Division began the crime scene investigation. The team was headed by Officer Dwayne Wolfer, a forensics expert. The morning after the shooting, the police discovered Sirhan's notebook at his apartment. 3 weeks earlier, he had written, "My determination to eliminate RFK is becoming the more of an unshakable obsession. Robert F. Kennedy must be assassinated." The case seemed open and shut. The police had motive, opportunity, and the smoking gun. The weapon taken from Sirhan was a .22 caliber Iver Johnson revolver, which held a maximum of 8 rounds. The LAPD determined that 8 bullets were fired in the pantry and that all 8 came from Sirhan's gun. The official report concluded that the bullets which struck Kennedy were fired first from a distance of 1 to 6 inches. However, the exact sequence in which the shots were fired is unclear. This is a schematic diagram drawn up by Officer Wolfer of the flight paths of the 8 bullets fired by Sirhan. Its accuracy is central to the question of whether or not a second gun was fired. In the drawing, Sirhan is not shown. This is a computer-generated simulation of the shooting based on the official diagram with Sirhan included. Sirhan is depicted by the red figure and Robert Kennedy by the white. The LAPD has positioned the senator with his right shoulder turned towards Sirhan. 1 bullet entered the back of Senator Kennedy's head, just behind his right ear. This was the fatal shot, and according to police, was the first one fired. Another penetrated the senator's right rear shoulder and lodged near his spine. A 3rd bullet entered Kennedy's back at an upward angle. It exited through his chest and was believed lost somewhere in the ceiling. A 4th passed through the right shoulder pad of Senator Kennedy's suit jacket. This bullet traveled at an upward angle and, according to the LAPD, then struck Paul Schrade in the forehead. Schrade was standing approximately 4 feet behind Kennedy at the time.
I've talked to Paul Schrade. Paul said that he had to be 9 feet tall or have his head on Kennedy's shoulder in order to be hit with this bullet. But this is key for the LAPD, that this is believed that bullet hit Paul Schrade, because if not, then there's another bullet in that room, which means there's a second gun. So literally, people have to be contortionists in order to make the bullet flight paths of the LAPD work.
According to the official version, 4 other bullets struck bystanders. One of these bullets ricocheted downward from the ceiling and hit campaign worker Elizabeth Evans in the head. but medical records show that the bullet which struck Evans entered at an upward angle.
If a bullet ricochets from the ceiling and comes down through another tile, it's going in a downward direction. You can't have a bullet going in a downward direction medically enter from any other direction than downward. Yet her bullet entered going upward.
The autopsy of Senator Kennedy concluded that the fatal shot, as well as the two other bullets which injured Kennedy, were fired at an upward angle from point-blank range, an inch to an inch and a half away. These findings have never been disputed. However, the eyewitnesses who testified at Sirhan's trial placed the gun muzzle a foot to 3 feet away from Kennedy.
If that guy, that bullet which killed Kennedy, that was an inch away from his head, this bullet didn't come from Sirhan. Did not come from Sirhan, because he never got that close.
Eyewitness Carl Euchre was standing next to Sirhan when the first shot was fired. Euchre was the maitre d' who was leading Senator Kennedy through the pantry at the time of the shooting.
Mr. Kennedy was shaking hands, and I was holding his hand, his arm. I was trying to pull him, getting into the colonial room. By that time, Sirhan came behind me, and he was trying to get through me, but I was pushing him back. And then I saw the gun when he shot him twice. Grabbed him, got him in a headlock, and pushed the gun away. And I was holding Sirhan over the steam table, and he kept shooting. And I say it again and again and again. That gun never got that close to Mr. Kennedy's head.
At the trial, Euchre testified that Sirhan fired only 2 shots before he was forced away from Kennedy. However, the official report stated that 4 shots were fired before Sirhan was restrained.
The gun was, I'd say, approximately anywhere from 1 to 2 feet away from him at the time of the firing of the first 2 shots.
He was not an inch away from Kennedy's head because he was across the room on this ice thing, and the room, I don't know the dimensions of the room, but he was not an inch away. And I'm not a coroner, but he was not an inch away. It was more than inches, it was feet.
None of the eyewitnesses who testified at the trial believed the gun could have been an inch and a half away from Kennedy. The LAPD determined that all the eyewitnesses were mistaken about what they had seen due to the panic and chaos of the moment.
There is always the need for careful examination of the eyewitness account of what happened. These people are not in any sense making anything up. This is what they believe they saw.
You put all these things together, it's difficult to discern under any circumstances how Sirhan, who is on top of a steam table, at this point at least from 3 to 6 feet away from Kennedy, could have shot Senator Kennedy from behind. It's an impossibility.
My opinion, and being close to the investigation during its entire life, was that the investigation was thorough, that the men who did the investigation were dedicated, and that the conclusions we drew from their investigations are accurate.
The only way that you can jibe what the coroner said, what the LAPD said in its crime scene examination, what the eyewitnesses say they saw, the only way you can jibe all of that is that there was a second guy firing a gun in that pantry that night.
Was there more than one gun in the pantry that night? Eyewitness Richard Luke claims that he saw a security guard pull his gun during the shooting and then leave the room.
I noticed that there is a gentleman in some type of a uniform, and he has a gun out. That gun is in his hand. But that gun was not aimed at Sirhan, who had just fired. It was in his hand, aimed down, not at Kennedy, but down toward the floor.
The security guard has acknowledged that he unholstered his weapon that night, but denies that it was fired. He cooperated with police and was cleared by the LAPD of any involvement in the attack.
We could not make any connection between Sirhan and this guard prior to that evening, none at all. That meant that it would be a phenomenal leap of logic to think they would both be in the kitchen at the same time unless there was a connection. So we did not, and I do not in any way believe there's a second gun involved.
I can't get a match. Here, take a look.
In 1975, a lawsuit filed by one of the surviving victims resulted in a re-examination of the firearms evidence. A panel of experts compared the 3 intact bullets recovered from the victims, as well as test bullets fired from Sirhan's revolver. Their findings did not rule out the possibility of a second gunman.
The 3 victim bullets were identified as having come from the same gun. The Sirhan gun has never been identified as firing those victim bullets, and that in and of itself is not conclusive that the Sirhan gun didn't do the firing. So we're left with a dilemma that we have 3 victims struck by bullets from the same gun, but we don't know whose gun it was.
The LAPD says that there were 6 victims who were hit by 8 bullets. They say that Sirhan made good on all 8 shots. They've accounted for all the bullets. You prove one more bullet, there's a second gun in that room.
According to Dan Moldea, photographs taken of the pantry entrance add to the possibility that more than 8 shots were fired. This FBI photograph identifies 2 bullet holes in the left door jamb, which are not accounted for in the official report.
This is the FBI's photograph from the scene and their accompanying caption from the June 8, 1968 FBI report. E2, a close-up view of the 2 bullet holes of area described above. Here's E2, and these are the 2 bullet holes as the FBI describes them. Not alleged bullet holes, bullet holes. E3, close-up view of 2 bullet holes, which is located in center door frame inside kitchen serving area in the direction of the backstage area. This is photograph 3, again, FBI, the bullet holes themselves. Not reported bullet holes, bullet holes.
That's not terribly unusual that anything that looks suspicious at that time would be recorded. That's not unusual at all. The fact that it turned not to be bullets, is just the way it turned out.
I saw 2 bullet holes in a center divider. I saw 2 bullets in the holes. I know what I saw, and the issue obviously is that others say that they weren't there.
It's a supposition on my part that the door jambs, whatever was in there that looked like bullets, were extracted and found not to be bullets. I presume that was done, but I don't have personal knowledge of that.
I have serious reservations whether or not any of Bobby's wounds were inflicted by Sirhan's gun. I, at this point, feel that there probably was a second gun there and that it was fired.
Portions of wooden door frames were removed from the pantry and booked into evidence. Police records state that they were destroyed on June 27, 1969, 2 months after Sirhan's conviction.
They were bulky, and they asked me if they could destroy them, and I said yes. Somebody at one time asked me if I had anything to do over again, would I change anything? And I said, sure, I would not release those panels, door jambs or whatever you call them, because of the problems that have come out of that.
I think that the LAPD thought they had an open and shut case. And when extra bullets showed up and when other crime scene evidence didn't jibe with the official version, I think the question became one of, nothing's going to bring him back. So why confuse all of this with the facts? And I think that the case just rested there. And it's been resting there for the past 22 years.
If there was someone who has additional information that would indicate a conspiracy of any kind or that Sirhan did not shoot Kennedy, I want to know about it. And if there is, that the case should be opened immediately.
4 days ago, the Washington Post published an article by Dan Moldea containing additional information which supports a second gun hypothesis. We interviewed Moldea a second time about this new evidence. Since last December, Moldea has conducted over 100 separate interviews with LAPD officers and officials, LA County Sheriff's deputies, and city fire marshals. Some of them are now retired, but many were present at the crime scene investigation.
These interviews are authentic, they are on the record, and many of them are on tape. And what I did was I basically asked these officers 2 questions. What did you do that night, and what did you see? These officers had no idea of the significance of what they were telling me. They were giving me direct responses to my direct questions. And about 20 of the people I talked to had clearly identified bullets, bullet fragments, or bullet holes at the crime scene itself in the kitchen pantry.
According to Moldea, the bullet holes and fragments that were described by some interview subjects correspond with the FBI photographs taken at the crime scene. During his interview, Moldea referred to transcripts of his conversations with officials.
I have a sheriff's deputy who says, quote, I remember one person trying to take a bullet out of the wall with a knife, a silver knife for a souvenir, end quote. I have one of the photographers saying, quote, I remember taking lots of pictures of bullet holes, 6 or 7, end quote. And when I asked him how sure he was that these were bullet holes, he was defiant with me, and he said, quote, a bullet hole looks like a bullet hole if you photographed enough of them, end quote. A detective who was there told me that he had seen, quote, quite a few bullet holes and actually identified the location of one bullet in the wall which corresponded with an FBI photograph. Another detective who was there that night told me about a bullet hole he had seen in the center divider at the crime scene between 2 swinging doors. Another LAPD sergeant told me, quote, as I was making my rounds, some bullet holes were pointed out to me in a door frame, end quote. And then he added that during a subsequent tour through the pantry, quote, one of the investigators pointed to a hole in a door frame and said, quote, we just pulled a bullet out of here, end quote. And then one crime scene investigator told me that he'd observed one of his supervisors remove 2 .22 caliber bullets from the center divider itself. Now, according to the Los Angeles Police Department's official reports, there should have been no bullet damage in the walls and the door frames at the crime scene that night. All of Sirhan's bullets had been accounted for. Now what we have is a situation where the Los Angeles Police Department, officers and top officials, are now corroborating what the FBI indicated in its photographs and accompanying captions back in 1968, that there were additional bullets and bullet holes at the crime scene itself. Now, if they are right, then there is a second gun in that room that was fired. And I think the only way to resolve these questions is to simply reopen the case.
After publication of the Washington Post article, we contacted the Los Angeles Police Department for their response.
Whatever that reporter says is irrelevant as far as we're concerned. We won't debate it, we won't discuss it. The investigation and its results reflect what our official position is, and that is that the murderer of Senator Kennedy was arrested and successfully prosecuted and continues to serve time.
Final services for Robert Francis Kennedy were held on June 8, 1968 at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City and were televised live to the nation.
My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life. To be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it. Those of us who loved him and who take him to his rest today pray that what he was to us and what he wished for others will someday come to pass for all the world.
22 years have passed since Senator Robert Kennedy was laid to rest. But the events surrounding his death are still at issue. Was there a second gunman in the Ambassador Hotel that night? Did the authorities overlook crucial evidence in the understandable rush to convict Sirhan Sirhan? And finally, if a second gun was fired, who pulled the trigger? February 21st, 1977. At approximately 9 p.m. on a cold winter night, Chicago firefighters responded to a call from a lakefront residential building. When the firemen arrived, they found that the blaze was confined to an upper floor apartment. Inside, a mattress in the middle of the living room floor was engulfed in flames. Initially, the apartment seemed unoccupied, but soon the firemen made a grim discovery.
Jack, we got a body here.
Beneath the mattress, they found the body of a woman named Teresita Basa. She had been stabbed in the chest. It also appeared that she had been raped, and the fire set in an attempt to cover up the murder. The police were bewildered by this brutal crime. The official autopsy revealed that Teresita Basa had not been raped. There was no apparent motive and little physical evidence. The investigation quickly reached a dead end. Then, nearly 6 months later, police were startled by a lead as mystifying as the crime itself. A Chicago couple claimed that the victim, Teresita Basa, had named her own killer after she was murdered, speaking to them from beyond the grave. Teresita Basa had moved to the United States from the Philippines in the 1960s. She worked as a respiratory therapist at a Chicago hospital.
Breathe in deeply and slowly, and open your mouth.
Co-workers described Teresita as a dedicated professional who gave all her time and energy to her patients. She seemed to have absolutely no enemies until the night of February 21st. Smoke and fire damage had destroyed all fingerprints, and nothing seemed to be missing from Teresita's apartment. Veteran Chicago detective Joe Stahula was totally baffled.
No, we better get the crime lab up here and have them go through it.
The only real piece of evidence we found was a memo indicating that she was expecting to obtain some theater tickets for a subject by name of A.S., who might have been expected at the apartment on that night.
Joe Stahula desperately grasped at any straw that held out hope of solving the case. 5.5 months after the murder, he responded to a strange call that would take his investigation into the realm of the paranormal.
Dr. Bordas? Yes. I'm Detective Stahula from the Chicago Police Department.
A Filipino physician had heard about Teresita Basa through his wife. The two women had worked together at the hospital. The doctor and his wife have requested anonymity. We will call them Enrico and Alicia Borda. They would tell Stahula an unbelievable but compelling story.
Have you ever had any dealings with possession or the occult?
Being a police officer, I've run into a lot of strange things. I've always tried to keep an open mind about it.
It was a funny situation. Being a policeman, you can tell when somebody's sincere and when they firmly believe they're giving you good information. I could tell it that he believed what he was telling me was the truth.
What I'm about to tell you may sound bizarre.
You see, I worked with the late Teresita. We were both respiratory therapists at the hospital.
Alicia told Detective Stahula of a strange series of events that took place after Teresita's death. Late one night, after working a long shift, Alicia had gone to a hospital lounge for a short nap. She said that seconds after she closed her eyes, she felt a ghostly presence in the room. It was Teresita Basa.
At first, I thought I was dreaming. I could not believe my eyes. But she is looking at me. staring at me. I did not know what to do. I was so frightened. I pray.
A couple of weeks after Alicia had seen Teresita,
The boarders went on to tell of a second experience 2 weeks later, this time at their home.
Alicia.
That night, Alicia had gone to bed early, complaining of extreme fatigue. Her husband had gone into the bedroom to check on her.
Dr. Bordeaux said he asked her if she was all right, and he said her voice was different.
Help me.
And attempting to get his wife to talk more, he asked her, "Who are you?"
What is your name?
Teresita Basa.
He was confused because he did not know Teresita Basa at the time.
You must go to the police. The police cannot find my killer. Tell them his name is Alan Showery. Tell them.
Upon listening to this, I really picked up now, A.S. Finally know who A.S. And I asked him did he know who Alan Showery was, and he indicated from the voice from Teresita Basa that Alan Showery was an orderly that worked at the hospital with both his wife and Teresita Basa. He said the first session only lasted about 30 minutes, and then at the end his wife woke up. He asked her if she knew what happened. She said she didn't, and then he sort of put it in the back of his mind and didn't act on it.
What's the matter?
He said then there was a second session where the voice again possessed his wife, and at this time the voice became more insistent.
Why did you not go to the police? Why?
He said he could not do anything to really help her, and the police couldn't do anything, that they would need evidence.
I will give you proof.
And at this point, the voice indicated that she had some evidence for him, that it was her jewelry.
After he killed me, he took my jewelry. He gave it to his girlfriend.
First thought that came into mind is, how can I put this on an official police report? But at this point, we began a background check on Alan Showery. Besides knowing Teresita Basa at the hospital, he lived a short distance from her. Do either of you recall Teresita Basa ever mentioning that Alan Showery was going to go over to her apartment? We also learned from co-workers at the hospital that Alan Showery was expected over at Teresita's apartment that night to repair her television. Last time Alan was over at her place. This was probably the best clue that we had, putting him on the scene at the approximate time of the murder.
Detective Stahula brought Alan Showery in for questioning.
Alan, when was the last time that you were at Teresita Basa's apartment?
Showery admitted he had gone to Teresita's apartment that night to repair her television.
I was there, but I was just there to fix the television, and I didn't have my tools. I didn't have the right
He
tools.
claimed he was unable to fix the set and returned to the apartment he shared with his girlfriend.
Alan, that's not true. You went back. We decided to contact the girlfriend and ask her if Alan had given her any jewelry recently within the last several months or weeks. So when we contacted her, she indicated yes, he had.
Alan Showery's girlfriend agreed to let Teresita Basa's relatives and friends inspect the jewelry Alan had given her.
Look at it and see if there's anything you can recognize or looks familiar to you. The family members immediately recognized a large green piece of jade and several other distinctive pieces of jewelry. Is there any other piece here look familiar?
The ring. That's Teresita's ring.
The ring on her finger?
Yeah, she was wearing it the last time I saw her.
Did Alan give you that ring?
Yes, he did.
How long ago did he give it to you?
I don't know, it was about 3 months ago.
It's all over, Alan. Teresita Basa's family just identified the jewelry. Now, I want to know what happened.
Confronted with this evidence, Showery made a full confession.
That night when I left her apartment,
Alan said that, yes, he had gone over there to work on Teresita Basa's television set. However, he returned home, and on the way back, formulated this plan to murder and rob Teresita.
I'm coming.
Alan returned to the apartment, and when Teresita let him in and she turned her back to lock the door, he said he quickly moved up behind her and placed a chokehold on her neck, holding it until she stopped struggling. He then dragged her body into the living room, where he disrobed her to make it look like it was a rape robbery type of scene. And then went into the bedroom and obtained the mattress off her bed, placing it over the body and setting the top of the mattress on fire.
While it defies belief, is it somehow possible that Teresita Basa could have spoken through Alicia Borda to catch her own killer? One thing is certain. Without the information Alicia provided, police would never have known the jewelry was missing, and Alan Showery would never have been arrested.
To this day, I'm not quite sure if Teresita came back. It's one of those bizarre incidents that you don't know is true or not true.
Despite his confession, Alan Showery pled not guilty to a charge of murder. But when a mistrial was declared because of a hung jury, Showery suddenly reversed himself and admitted his guilt. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison. In the summer of 1967, Jim Bukowski married his high school sweetheart, Dolores. A week later, he was shipped to Vietnam. On August 29, 1968, 4 months into his tour of duty, Jim's platoon was overrun by a large contingent of North Vietnamese troops.
They blew us to smithereens. I went flying through the air. I landed 30 feet down the hill. I picked up my leg that was blown off, and I crawled back up the hill.
Has he been conscious at all?
I don't know. He keeps coming in and out.
My first conscious memory was looking up and seeing this blonde lady helping me.
We need a doctor back over here.
Captain Linda Sharp.
Hi, Jim. How you doing?
With Captain Sharp's help, Jim began to recover from his physical wounds, but the emotional trauma still tormented him.
Hurry up, get your temperature down. So, you gonna write your wife about your leg?
I don't know how. You were not allowed to leave the MASH unit until you wrote a letter to your wife. I didn't have the courage to write it. She forced me to do it. And then I didn't know she had sent a letter and a picture to my wife with it. I don't think that I would have came back to my wife without Captain Sharp. I would very much like to thank her for what she did for me. And all the other guys.
Before this segment even aired, Linda Sharp saw a promotional announcement for Jim's story on Unsolved Mysteries. She immediately called our telecenter. 2 weeks later, she and Jim were reunited.
Hi, how are you?
You look so good. You really do.
You too. When I opened the door, I was elated. All I wanted to do was give her a great big hug and just hug her and thank her and kiss her on the cheek and just try to show my appreciation.
I feel very blessed to be here, to actually see him and talk with him and hear his versions of what went on. Because sometimes what nurses we don't realize that we have an impact on patients' lives. And I certainly didn't realize the impact I had on his life at all.
Hello. How are you?
Over the years, I've thought about Jim and Dolores and wondered how they were doing and if they were still together. And seeing this show on TV and seeing them in the segment was just the best news that just made it all worthwhile. It really pulled things together for me, and it reinforced that what I did over there was important.
Linda, this is my son, Corey.
Hi, Corey.
Moments after arriving, Linda received an unexpected gift, a portrait of a Vietnam nurse, which Jim had framed for her.
Well, that's how much I think of you. I had this made up for you, and I thought you'd like to have this.
When he gave me the plaque, it was just such a special moment. It's made this day very, very special, something that is like the culmination of a nursing career. Thank you. To be thanked in such a special way is very memorable, something I'll never forget.
This meeting with Linda represents, in my healing, the final step, knowing that I, in my own mind, mentally, physically, and the way I feel right now, am all right. I finally beat the battle. We lost a few battles, but I have won the war. Let me rephrase that. I have won the war.
February 10th, 1990, Las Cruces, New Mexico. 8 a.m., an hour before opening time at a local bowling alley. Ida, the cook, was in the kitchen preparing for the lunch hour rush. The day manager, Stephanie, was in the office adding up the previous night's receipts. With Stephanie were her 12-year-old daughter, Melissa, and Amy, a friend of Melissa's.
Just hit code, the next 5.
This is a hold down. Come with me.
At approximately 8:20, Ida was surprised in the kitchen by a stranger wielding a pistol. He forced her at gunpoint towards the office, where Stephanie and the young girls were being held by a second gunman.
As I went in the office,
Still down in the corner.
I saw Stephanie and Melissa and Amy.
Where's the rest of the money?
It's in there.
Show me.
Well, I just thought they're gonna get money and take off.
Get back down here.
Especially when they told us, all of you put your heads down.
The second gunman took $4,000 from the safe.
Put your heads down. Put your heads down.
When he said that, I thought, these guys are leaving, So we did. And that's when I felt they had shot me in the head.
Get inside. Get in the corner.
Seconds later, Steve Turan, his 2.5-year-old daughter Valerie, and his stepdaughter Paula, age 7, stumbled onto the scene. All 7 witnesses had been shot in the head. Stephen Turan, his stepdaughter Paula, and Melissa's friend Amy were dead at the scene. Valerie Turan died at the hospital that day. Incredibly, Stephanie, Melissa, and Ida survived the vicious attack.
We assessed the scene immediately. We canvassed the neighborhood, and thank God that we were able to come up with a couple of witnesses that were able to give us some pretty decent composites.
At around 8:15 that morning, Stephanie's brother, Steve, had stopped by the bowling alley for a few minutes on his way to school.
I saw 2 Hispanic gentlemen walking from the back of the building towards the front. The older gentleman handed the younger gentleman a small case. The older gentleman squats down and looks right at me as I'm driving towards them. I took notice of what they were wearing, their descriptions, hair color, skin, eyes.
Based on Steve's testimony and that of other witnesses, the police drew up these composites of the killers. Suspect number 1 is approximately 29 to 30 years old, 5 feet 10 inches tall, and weighs 170 pounds. He has dark wavy hair and a dark complexion with light-colored eyes. He speaks excellent English with no Spanish accent. The second suspect is 40 to 50 years old, 5 feet 7 inches tall, and weighs approximately 140 pounds. He has thinning salt and pepper hair, brown eyes, and a dark complexion. He speaks with a slight Spanish accent. For every mystery, there is someone, somewhere, who knows the truth. Perhaps that someone was watching. Perhaps it's you.
Thank you.